It all started on what was supposed to be a normal Saturday morning. I stepped outside to grab the mail in my slippers, coffee in hand, when I noticed something strange. A tow truck was slowly backing into my driveway. At first, I thought maybe one of the neighbors had called for it. But then I saw her, Karen, arms crossed, standing at the edge of my lawn like she owned the place, directing the driver like she was running a traffic stop. My car, parked perfectly in my driveway, was apparently a violation, according to her. I asked her what was going on, trying to stay calm, but she cut me off and said, "This car needs to be removed. It's blocking the sidewalk." That would have made sense if it was anywhere near the sidewalk. It wasn't. It was well within my property line. But Karen wasn't interested in facts. She waved a clipboard around like it was the Constitution and announced she was with the HOA. That's when I knew this was going to be a nightmare. I tried to reason with her, pointing out that she had no authority to tow anything off private property. But she doubled down, saying she had filed multiple complaints, and the HOA had given her the right to enforce the rules. That made me pause, because not only had I never received a single warning from the HOA, but I also knew every single person on the board, and Karen wasn't one of them. I asked her what position she held. She dodged the question. Red flag number 1. Then the tow truck driver got out and asked her again, "Ma'am, are you sure this is authorized?" She didn't even blink. "Yes, this car has been parked here for days." Which was another lie. I had driven it just the night before. Now I was fuming, but I kept my cool because something felt off, really off. So I stepped back and started recording. And just like that, Karen's entire plan started to unravel. But it wasn't the recording that spooked her. It was something else, something even she didn't see coming. Karen stood there like she was some kind of law enforcement officer, eyes blazing, lips pursed, and clipboard held high like it was a badge. The tow truck driver looked uncertain, glancing between me and her like he'd just realized he might have stepped into a situation way messier than a simple job. I calmly asked him, "Did she show you any authorization to tow this car?" He looked at Karen expectantly. She scoffed and flipped through some papers on her clipboard like she was about to pull out the golden ticket of HOA enforcement. "I don't need to show him anything," she said sharply. "This car is illegally parked and it needs to go." The driver, clearly not wanting to get sued or lose his license, asked again, "Ma'am, is this your property?" That's when Karen snapped. "I represent the HOA. That is my authority. I'm allowed to issue citations and coordinate enforcement. This car violates community regulations. It's staying in the driveway more than 48 hours without movement, and that's against Code 4.7. I swear she said that code like she was quoting state law. But I wasn't buying it, not for a second. You could tell she had practiced this speech, probably in front of a mirror, maybe even a couple of her equally entitled friends cheering her on in a group chat. I asked again, this time louder so the tow truck guy could really hear me. "She's not on the HOA board. She doesn't work for the HOA. She doesn't even live on this side of the street." The driver's eyes widened just a little at that last part. Karen turned toward me and hissed, "You're harassing me." I almost laughed. "I'm harassing you? On my driveway? With a tow truck you called to remove my car?" The absurdity of it all was becoming too much, even for the guy with the tow hook in his hand. But Karen wasn't done. She stepped in between me and the tow truck driver like she was about to give orders to her private army. "Proceed," she told him, chin high, like she was ordering an airstrike. The guy hesitated. Then he looked me dead in the eye and said, "Look, man, I don't want trouble. If this is your property and you're not authorizing the tow, I can't legally move the vehicle." Karen almost exploded. She stomped forward, nearly tripping over my lawn gnome, and yelled, "You have no idea who I am. I will be reporting you. And you," she pointed at me like a judge handing down a sentence, "will be fined, repeatedly, until you learn some respect." That's when I took my phone out again and started recording in earnest. "Go ahead, Mom," I said. "Explain to the camera what you just tried to do on private property." That made her pause, just a flicker, but it was there. The realization that she was being documented, not just confronted, but fully documented. She tried to regain control, muttering something about harassment again, but it didn't land the way she thought it would. The driver quietly backed away from my car, unclipped the hook from the undercarriage, and gave me a look that said, "I'm so sorry for even showing up here." Karen noticed that and panicked. She ran up to him, whispering something I couldn't hear, gesturing wildly. He shook his head. "I need proper authorization to do this, and I'm not getting sued over this mess." Karen's voice rose an octave. "You said you were available. I'm your client." He cut her off gently. "I tow illegally parked cars from commercial lots, not family driveways in suburban neighborhoods unless it's clearly marked or I have a signed order. I didn't know it was a personal request. You never told me this was someone else's home." Boom. Right there. She had lied. Probably booked him with some vague excuse. Didn't mention it was about her neighbor. Didn't tell him it was a personal vendetta. Just claimed it was a violation and hoped the guy would go along with it. But now, the cracks were showing. She turned on me again, trying to find any moral high ground. "You've left that car sitting for days. This is a community. We don't allow that here." I shrugged, not even pretending to be polite anymore. "I moved it last night. You can ask my security cam." And then I motioned toward the small black camera attached to my garage, which had a perfect view of the entire driveway. Karen froze again. She didn't know about that, and I had the footage ready to pull up at a moment's notice. For the first time since this circus started, she didn't have a comeback. But she wasn't about to retreat quietly. That's not how people like Karen operate. Instead, she pivoted. "Fine," she snapped. "You want to do this the hard way? I'm calling the HOA, right now. We'll see what they say about your little attitude problem." She pulled out her phone like it was a weapon. I smiled. "Please do. Want me to dial the HOA president for you? I've got his number saved. Pretty sure he's playing golf right now. Should I interrupt?" That set her off again. She didn't know how to respond. Her entire identity was wrapped up in fake authority, in pretending to be more important than she really was. And now, the act was unraveling and the audience, me, the tow truck driver, and even the neighbors who had started peeking through their blinds, wasn't buying it anymore. That's when the tow truck driver spoke up again. "Ma'am, I'm gonna have to leave. I can't be involved in a neighbor dispute." He climbed back into his truck and slowly pulled away, leaving Karen standing there, alone, fuming. She turned to me with narrowed eyes. "This isn't over." I didn't say a word, just held up my phone, still recording, and gave her a little wave. She stormed off down the sidewalk like a cartoon villain who'd just been foiled by Scooby-Doo. But even as she disappeared, I knew she wasn't done. People like Karen don't walk away quietly. They regroup, they re-strategize, and they always come back thinking this time they'll win. And I was right. Because just a few hours later, I saw her again, marching across the street, heading straight for the HOA office with fire in her eyes and a brand new plan to put me in my place. But what Karen didn't realize was that the HOA wasn't exactly thrilled to see her either. By the time Karen stomped off with her imaginary clipboard and wounded pride, I figured maybe, just maybe, she'd finally gotten the message. The tow truck was gone, the confrontation was over, and her fake HOA enforcer act had completely collapsed in front of everyone. But I underestimated her. Because later that evening, right as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast that deep orange glow across our street, I heard the low rumble of a truck outside. At first, I thought it was just a delivery or one of the neighbors moving something bulky. But when I peeked out my window, there it was. A different tow truck. This one unmarked, idling just outside my driveway. My stomach dropped. Karen was back. And this time, she wasn't even pretending to involve authority. She was going rogue. I stepped outside calmly, phone in hand, heart thudding. The driver stepped out, looking confused but not hostile, so I walked up and said, "Can I help you?" He blinked at me, glancing at his clipboard. "I'm here to pick up a black SUV. Order says it's been abandoned and the owner is unknown." My lips curled into a slow smile. "That's my SUV, and you've been lied to." His eyes widened, and I could see the instant realization hit him. He'd been set up too. Karen appeared around the corner, this time wearing a smug grin, like she was on some mission from the heavens. "It's been sitting for days," she said casually, like she hadn't already been publicly embarrassed this morning. "There's a community standard." I turned to the tow driver and asked to see the service order. He hesitated, but showed me the digital receipt on his phone. Sure enough, the request came from someone listed as Karen H., but there was no official HOA documentation, no contact from local law enforcement, nothing that would legally authorize him to touch my vehicle. I pointed this out. That's a private citizen trying to tow a registered vehicle from private property. If you go through with it, you're committing theft. The man paled. Look, man, I'm just doing my job. I had no idea this was personal. I nodded. I believe you, but I've already had one tow guy here today. You're number 2. If you touch my SUV, I'm calling the cops, and you'll be listed in the police report, even if she ordered it. Karen stepped in again, waving her arms. Don't listen to him. He's trying to scare you. This is a neighborhood matter. He knows he's in violation. That car has been an eyesore for weeks. I laughed. Karen, I drove it yesterday. My camera recorded it. The HOA president confirmed this morning that there are no such codes. You're just mad because I parked on my driveway, and that makes you uncomfortable for some reason you haven't figured out yet. The driver clearly wanted no part of this. He held up his hands and said, I'm leaving. You guys work this out. But before he could climb back in the truck, Karen snapped. You're useless. This is why this neighborhood is going downhill. No one has any respect for the rules. The guy turned to her, face completely blank. Lady, you gave me a fake work order to steal someone's car. You're lucky I don't report you. And with that, he drove off, tires crunching over gravel, and disappeared down the street. Karen stood frozen for a beat, probably realizing her perfect plan had failed. Again. But this time? Oh, she was furious. She didn't scream, she didn't stomp. She just gave me a cold, poisonous glare, turned on her heel, and marched back toward her house. The thing is, I knew that look. That wasn't the look of defeat. That was the look of someone scheming. Again, I wasn't even mad anymore. It was surreal, like I was trapped in a sitcom where the villain kept coming back with worse and worse ideas. But I had a new idea of my own. Document everything. I pulled the security footage, both incidents, uploaded them to the cloud. Then I typed up a summary and sent it to the actual HOA president. Not to make trouble, but just to cover myself. He responded within an hour, saying, Thanks for letting me know. We've had complaints about her before. That's when it clicked. Karen had a history. I wasn't the first. Probably wouldn't be the last, but I could be the one that finally put a stop to it. The next morning, something unbelievable happened. I got a knock at the door. I opened it expecting Amazon or a neighbor, but no, it was 2 police officers. My heart skipped. One of them smiled politely and said, We received a complaint about a disturbance involving a vehicle. Mind if we ask you a few questions? Karen, of course, she called the cops on me. I invited them in, showed them the footage, explained everything, even pulled up the digital tow request from the second guy. The officers watched it all, then looked at each other. She tried to tow your car twice? With no authority? I nodded. They shook their heads and said, You've done everything right. We'll be speaking with her next. I walked them outside and watched them cross the street toward Karen's house. She opened her door and immediately launched into some dramatic, overacted monologue, complete with hand gestures and what I assume were tears. The officers weren't buying it. One of them held up a hand and calmly said something that made her step back. Then he pointed at my house. I knew in that moment the tables were finally turning. I didn't hear what they told her exactly, but her reaction said everything. Her face went from indignant to pale in a matter of seconds. She tried to argue, but the second officer showed her something on a phone, probably the footage I had provided. Her mouth snapped shut. She nodded stiffly, closed the door without another word, and that was it. The war was over, or so I thought. Because while Karen didn't try to tow my car again, what came next was somehow even more ridiculous, more unhinged, and more petty than anything she'd done before. And it all started with a single piece of paper taped to my mailbox. I honestly thought things might cool down after the police incident. Karen had been publicly embarrassed, twice. First with the tow truck debacle, then again when the cops took my side and made her back off. Most people would have gotten the message, but Karen? She wasn't most people. She saw herself as some kind of righteous neighborhood warrior, chosen by the universe to enforce fake rules and keep the aesthetic of the street intact, even if it meant breaking the actual law to do it. So when I found that crumpled paper taped to my mailbox, I didn't even need to unfold it to know who it was from. But I did anyway. It was a typed-out letter with no official letterhead, no contact number, just some bold statements about me violating neighborhood standards, with the word warning written in red Sharpie at the bottom. I laughed out loud. She was still trying to play HOA president like it was her personal hobby. But this time, I didn't just document it. I sent it directly to the real HOA board, because I was done playing. And the board? Oh, they responded fast. Like, very fast. Apparently, Karen had already been on thin ice with them. Multiple neighbors had reported her for similar stunts, making fake complaints, confronting people about things that weren't rules, and pretending to represent the HOA. One board member even told me, "She's been warned before, but this is next level." So they decided it was time to have a little meeting. Not with me, but with Karen. And guess who got invited to attend as a witness? Yup, me. I didn't even have to say much when I walked into that little HOA community office the following week. The board members were already lined up at the table, and Karen was sitting stiffly in a plastic chair across from them, wearing a blouse like she thought it was a job interview. Her face twisted into that fake smile when I entered, but the HOA president didn't even let her speak first. "Karen," he began, voice calm but firm, "we've reviewed multiple complaints about your behavior. We've seen the footage. We've seen the fake letters. This has to stop." Karen blinked like she couldn't believe this was happening. She tried to cut in, something about maintaining community values, but the vice president leaned forward and said, "You are not authorized to speak on behalf of this board. You never have been." Her mouth snapped shut, eyes darting around like she was trying to find a lifeline. That's when I handed over the printed screenshots, her fake violation letter, the time-stamped video clips, the digital tow order. One of the board members read the letter out loud, then held it up. "You typed this, Karen?" Silence. She didn't nod, didn't shake her head, just stared at the table like it might open up and swallow her. The HOA president sighed and said, "Karen, do you understand how serious this is? Impersonating HOA authority is grounds for legal action." That got her attention. "Wait, legal? I was just trying to help the neighborhood. That car was ruining the vibe." Everyone stared. One board member leaned back in his chair and muttered, "You tried to have it towed. Twice." Another said, "You escalated a non-issue into a neighborhood disturbance. That's not helping." And here's where it got really interesting. Because apparently, Karen had been warned officially months ago. Not just verbally. There was a written record, a cease and desist style email they had sent her after she told a neighbor their Halloween decorations violated some light regulation code she'd made up. This woman was a serial pretend HOA enforcer. And now, with all this evidence piled up, they were finally ready to act. The president turned to me and said, "Thank you for your time and your patience. You won't have to deal with this again." Then he turned back to Karen and said the words I didn't expect. "You are now barred from attending any HOA-related events or speaking on behalf of the board in any capacity. If you continue this behavior, we will pursue formal legal action for harassment and impersonation." Karen looked like someone had unplugged her from the wall. Her whole body slumped. And for once, she had no comeback. Not a single word. I thought that was the end. Really. I stood up, shook hands with the board, thanked them, and left. But as I walked to my car, I noticed Karen in the parking lot, pacing with her phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was low, panicked, almost desperate. I couldn't hear all of it, but I caught one sentence that stuck with me. "They're turning everyone against me." That's when it hit me. Karen wasn't just power-hungry. She was lonely. The fake authority, the fake letters, the dramatics. It wasn't just about control. It was her way of forcing relevance into her life, creating purpose out of chaos. And now, even that was slipping through her fingers. I almost felt bad, almost. But then I remembered all the stress, all the unnecessary drama, the tow truck that could have scratched up my car, the cops that had to come out because of her fantasy rules. So no, I didn't feel bad. I felt relieved. But not as relieved as I would be after what came next. Because just when it seemed like peace had finally returned to our street, Karen decided to go out with a bang. And what she did next was so over the top, so unbelievably ridiculous. It didn't just shake up the neighborhood. It made her internet famous. After Karen had been legally shut down by the HOA and the restraining order had been put in place, I thought that would be the end of it. I figured she'd pack up and move out, and that would be the final chapter in this never-ending saga. But I was wrong. Like most people who can't handle losing control, Karen didn't just walk away quietly. She was plotting her next move, one final attempt to get back at me. What I didn't know at the time was that her ultimate plan was going to set the stage for one of the most satisfying legal forms of revenge I've ever seen. It all started innocently enough. A few weeks after she had moved out of the neighborhood, I began to notice something strange. My mailbox had been tampered with. At first, I thought it was a mistake, maybe just a random incident. But over time, it became clear that this was deliberate. First, I received a couple of odd, almost threatening letters, completely unrelated to anything that had happened before. One was from a law firm claiming that I owed a fine for parking violations, even though I had already resolved that issue. The other came from a so-called community organization, demanding that I pay a fee for something that sounded completely fabricated. It didn't take long for me to put two and two together. Karen had returned in a way I didn't expect. This time, she wasn't coming to my door or leaving notes on my car. She was using the system to get at me. I immediately knew this had to be her. No one else would be petty enough to try and mess with me after everything that had happened. The legal threats were absurd, and the type of thing she'd pulled just to get under my skin. But here's the thing. I wasn't about to let her win. I'd already dealt with her once, and I was not going to let her sneak back in with some underhanded attempt at revenge. So I started digging. The more I looked into these letters, the clearer it became that they were bogus. They weren't legitimate legal claims or requests from any reputable organizations. They were fake. It was a classic case of Karen trying to use the law as a weapon, but not even bothering to make sure she covered her tracks properly. And I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I immediately contacted the authorities and the HOA once again. Together, we discovered that Karen had been using a fake address to send the letters, and that she had been harassing not just me, but several of my neighbors as well. As it turned out, she wasn't done causing chaos. This time, her mistake would cost her everything. It didn't take long for the legal process to unfold. Karen was caught, and she had to face the consequences of her actions. She was served with multiple lawsuits for fraud and harassment, and the local authorities were involved once again to ensure that she couldn't continue her antics. But here's the best part. The final piece of this story is the cherry on top of the cake. As part of the legal proceedings, Karen was forced to pay restitution to those she had wronged, including me. I received compensation for the stress, the time I had spent dealing with her nonsense, and, of course, the fake legal threats she had made. But the sweetest part? Karen's entire reputation, the one she had tried to build as this community watchdog, was destroyed. Not only had she been publicly humiliated, but her legal actions had sealed her fate. She was officially banned from ever making any claims against any of her neighbors again. And let me tell you, the irony of it all was almost too perfect. The same person who had tried to destroy my peace and control my life had been brought down by her own selfishness and petty revenge attempts. She had spent all that time trying to make me miserable, and in the end, it was her own downfall. There was no celebration from my side, no victory dance. I just watched her pay the price for the endless drama she had caused. That was more satisfying than any public apology could ever be. But the best part? The best part is that she never knew what hit her. She thought she could mess with me, mess with my life, but in the end, it was her own actions that were her undoing. That's the power of standing up for yourself and using the law to protect your rights. Karen didn't just lose her battle against me, she lost her entire game. Now, as I sit here reflecting on the entire saga, I realize something important. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't immediate or emotional. It's legal. It's smart. It's about playing the game by the rules and making sure you come out on top. The sweetest revenge was simply letting her make her own mistakes, and when she did, I was there, watching it all unfold. Karen thought she could destroy me, but in the end, I destroyed the very thing she'd tried to control, the narrative. So, if you've been following this crazy ride and you've enjoyed watching the downfall of a petty, entitled Karen, then you're in the right place. This story isn't just about getting even, it's about standing your ground, fighting back with the law, and knowing that the truth will always win. If you want more of these real crazy stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Join the community and never miss a moment of this roller coaster ride. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Subscribe now, because you've just witnessed the sweet taste of revenge, and I've got more stories that'll blow your mind.